Oh, I can't hear you.
But you can't see us. You should be able to see us.
Yeah, I do. Oh, there we are.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, Diane. Hey, Jonathan. How's everyone doing?
Great. How are you doing?
We're doing really well. Thanks for joining us.
We're asking.
Sure. We're about to. I'm gonna put us on speaker view because we're about to welcome everybody, and then we'll do a little intro, and then we'll come to you guys if that's cool.
That's cool.
Sweet. Okay. Oh. Boop. Cool. How are we looking there?
Good.
How's the screen looking? It's gonna catch up in a second. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm seeing. There we go. So we're probably a little behind. Cool. So come down. Oh, yeah, we don't want that. So this is fun, like everybody's just watching us.
I know.
Not be ready. It's a new.
Passion button.
Yeah, it's a new like behind the scenes look at the beginning of the end. It's fine. It's good. Everyone's used to it. All the 5 people that signed in right at 7 got to see us finish setting up.
Backstage pass.
Backstage
like
pass,
that.
man.
It's like Carrie Bradshaw when she logged on to AIM and she's like, "Can he see me?" And she like hid.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, Sex and the City.
It doesn't
What's
matter.
Sex and the City? That
Oh.
awful show. Jonathan's like, no, Michael did not say what's Sex in the City. So welcome everyone. Welcome to what is this show? This is Empathy Radio today. Welcome to Empathy Radio. It's Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
This is Empathy Radio. I'm Michael Herman, one of the hosts of Empathy Radio.
And I am Emily Vitrano. Tune in. This is Empathy Radio. Tune in to be heard.
Yes, and welcome. Thank you to everyone who's watching. Thank you to our wonderful guests who you're going to meet in a moment, who are joining us this week as well. Just a quick bit of info for those who are new to the show. Empathy Radio, we're in about our 5th week now, our 5th episode. And Empathy Radio spun out of the larger Empathy Project that we started about 2 months ago. And our Volume 1 premiered on May 30th to a sold-out Zoom audience. And that project addressed everyone's experiences with the pandemic.
Yep.
And then we right away turned around and started Volume 2, which will actually go live this coming Saturday night. And Volume 2 addresses everyone's experience around the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, all of the protests, and our current crisis that we're all dealing with in terms of our social unrest around police brutality and racism in this country.
Yep.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So what we realized, though, we got such a huge response to the Empathy Project and received so many stories from people who wanted to share their experience. And we could only, for each show, we could only really, use about 10 or 11 stories each time. And there were so many more that we wanted to share with you that's where Empathy Radio came from, yeah?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So it came from, yes, I'm like, are you going to add to?
No, that's it.
That's it,
That's
right.
all it is.
So we thought, like, let's do a weekly show where we can read some of the stories that didn't quite fit into each larger project.
And also that we can continue to engage in conversation.
Yes.
We're really excited about the opportunity with all the work we do, but particularly with the Empathy Project, to have an opportunity to maybe model constructive conversation.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's been really successful over the last few weeks. We've had some really great guests on who have helped us really engage in the conversation and provide a space for everyone on all sides of any issue to really feel like they're being heard and that we can all listen to each other, just to provide a space for us all to listen to each other so we can understand everyone's point of view and hopefully empathize a little bit more. Yeah?
Yes.
So something really cool that we're gonna tell you, it's a surprise. We're gonna just say it right now. It wasn't planned. We have this really cool thing we're gonna do between right now and Tuesday night. So the next 48 hours. If you would like to donate via our Venmo, which is at Empathy Project, or our PayPal giving fund link that Rachel's going to drop in the comments right now, we're going to do a virtual raffle. What? A virtual raffle? What's that?
I don't know, Michael. Tell me more.
Oh, okay. So a virtual raffle is for $5. If you make a donation of $5 to our Venmo at Empathy Project or our PayPal giving fund link that Rachel's dropping in the comments between now and Tuesday night, you will be entered to win. First prize will be a ticket to the Empathy Project Volume 2 show on this Saturday night and a cool Empathy Project t-shirt. And that's not all. A super cool Empathy Project tote bag to do your grocery shopping with. Amazing. Second prize, a ticket to the show and a tote bag. And third prize, a ticket to the show. So either way, if you win one of those three things, all you had to do is make a $5 donation and you win.
Well, you win all the way because the donation you're giving to our projects and the company and helping to make sure our artists get paid. So, there's no way that you're not winning.
You're winning. You're just winning.
It's a big win.
Everybody's winning.
Everybody's.
Yeah. So that's cool. So please, you can make the donation during the show, and we'll shout out to you because we'll see it coming up on my devices. And Rachel will monitor the chat. And so if you'd like to make a donation, $5 between now and Tuesday night, we'll announce the winners live Tuesday night in the News Hard slot.
Do you think Chuck Taylor will win?
Oh, maybe Chuck Taylor will not only win, but maybe he'll show up live to accept his prize.
Know.
Fuck
He's
off.
a very busy man.
He is a very busy man.
He has a lot of stuff to sell.
He does have to sell a lot of things. We should have gotten him to sell
I
this.
know!
That would have been the thing.
Who
Right.
knows?
Maybe
knows?
he will.
Maybe tomorrow.
Cool. So please, if you're able to do so, that would be really helpful. Yeah. It'll help pay our artists, like Rachel said, and a portion of those donations are, like Rachel didn't say that, Emily said that. And I'm struggling today. So, and a portion of the donations coming in this time for Volume 2 will be donated to Black Lives Matter as well. Not just our artists in performing, but also Black Lives Matter. So on to the show. Yeah. We have two amazing guests with us tonight. Two close friends of the Outer Loop and the Empathy Project, Diane Lent and Jonathan Alsop, who you can kind of see up there in the top of your screen for the moment. Before we bring them in, we thought we would read. Diane had submitted. Diane had a really beautiful submission to Empathy Project Volume 2, and we thought it was really a nice day today, a really good time for us to read this piece. And then we have Diane here, which is amazing. We always love to have Diane with us. So maybe we'll talk about a little, and have Jonathan and Diane join the conversation, and maybe we can kind of start a discussion that we know always overflows into the chat. And if anyone while you're listening, like we say every week, you can zoom in live with us as well and talk with us. You too can zoom in live. And if you like to do that, you can let us know in the chat, and Rachel will zoom you in with us. So with that, I'll read Diane's piece, and then we'll talk about it. It would require me to be able to see it, so that's going to be half the battle. So here we go. I went to my first protest in a very long time. Way back in the day, I was there with fist pumping, black armbands, and my Grateful Dead t-shirt. Today was different. Yes, we marched up the main street of our white suburban town, carrying signs, Black Lives Matter, calling for justice. We stood in front of the town hall and listened to speakers. One was a woman of color that had moved to our town a while back for a better education for her children. And every day as she left her house, she was reminded of the color of her skin. She was on many committees and boards to change perspectives. She was even on the committee that raised money and built one of the beautiful playgrounds we have in town. And every day she was reminded of the color of her skin. In school, her children would hear racial comments behind their backs. After 7 years, she couldn't take it anymore and moved back to a place where the color of her skin didn't matter. We heard from the chief of police saying, "We will do better." And I believe he means it. He's a good man and tries to be fair. We heard from the Democratic National Committee chair reminding us to vote, and from others calling for change. Then we heard the names read of the black people killed doing ordinary things. We all took a knee, and by the time the list was read, my heart and my knees ached. We then moved to the street where we laid down on the tarmac. I've never laid down on tarmac before. We put our hands behind our backs and laid there for 9 minutes calling for justice. We tried to imagine what it was like to be laying there with our hands bound behind us, knees pressing into our back, one knee on our neck, choking off the air so we could not breathe. After 9 minutes, unlike George Floyd, we got up and went back to where we had gathered. We sang, "We Shall Overcome." And will we? Can we put away our fear and our learned hatred to truly overcome? Or will we continue to come back to this place of protest time and time again and change nothing? Whew. So, I don't know, was there anything? I'm going to bring both Diane and Jonathan on right now. Hi, both of you. I see you're both muted. If you want to unmute in case you want to join, or unmute at your whenever you'd like to. Diane, is there anything that you wanted to say in addition to that, or does the piece speak for itself?
The piece really, for me, speaks for itself. It was a moving piece, but it seems that I've seen these protests time over. I mean, it was many, many years ago that we've been saying the same thing, and still the same thing keeps happening. So I'm hoping that maybe the conversation is changing.
Yeah. Does it feel like it at all? Does it feel, like I don't think the rest of us were around for the first round like you were alluding to, but does it feel any different?
It does feel different in the fact that there are many more people involved than back in the day. Back in the day, well, it was a party too. I mean, I have to admit it,
Yeah.
But it was mostly young people. Now at the protest, there were all kinds of different ages that were there, which wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So that was something. I hope that it's something that we can change.
Yeah. Yeah. Jonathan, any thoughts on either on Diane's piece or anything else you've been thinking about?
Yeah. Recently I was having a conversation with a friend, and it's one of the struggles that we deal with in America is that, like, oh, we want this, but they keep creating this blockade for this. And we talk about the need for change, and unfortunately especially for police brutality, it has to happen at a local level. So we keep on expressing the importance of having people vote in their local elections. However, we're now not having the conversation of voter suppression. Like, if we're looking at Philadelphia, I remember it was really big in Philadelphia. Like, people came out the woodworks to make sure that, like, Obama wasn't going to work by going to places in West Philly to make sure that people weren't going to vote, trying to dissuade voters from voting. And especially in, like, Black communities, that is something that is very real. Like, the threats, the dissuade the amount of information that's being given to them to not make those informed decisions. And so it's hard because you have these people that don't believe in the system. It's like, why would my vote matter? It never has. How can we convince those people? And then how can we get the people that do want to vote have the opportunity to vote? And because if we truly want the change to happen and we want officials to be in the office, how can we make sure that people are not trying to take away that American right?
Yeah. Are you seeing any of that up in Maine?
No, and that's very interesting. There's certainly much more conversation than there was before, but I think what I'm seeing that I didn't see before is things like the Black Wall Street, that area was destroyed. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That people were stopping people from voting. Again, no idea. It doesn't. And I think that if I'm hoping that if people were more aware that this was happening, that they would do more. I certainly would do more to stop it. I was just in a conversation today with a minister, and how she's bringing the conversation to her congregation, of how to not be so separate, and join with people and not be diverse. So it's an important conversation.
Yeah. I'm interested in what everyone thinks, that everyone's hitting on this idea that we're only now starting to like see more people raising awareness, and there seems to then be more space being made through the media and through other outlets for having these conversations. What kept us from having these conversations until now, when this has all been going on for a lot longer than the last 2 months?
Something that I was actually preface, or the prologue, basically, of a book I was given by my friend called The Inclusion Paradox, gave a great breakdown of, in society, the different values that different groups have. So basically, when you're looking at white America and the things that they value at their core, it's respect and it's peace. So for white people in America, it's like, I don't want anything to challenge the idea that we have peace, and anything that would challenge that, they take as a personal offense of disrespect.
Oh, wow.
For black people in America, what that is what their main thing is justice. I see something that's wrong and I want to call it out and acknowledge it. So now you have something very interesting. Hey, we have this issue that's going on in America. No, we don't. You're upsetting me because everything is fine. And this is the power of psychology that we have now. Having this understanding, it makes it so much easier now to have this conversation of you need to not take this as a direct attack. You need to take this as an acknowledgement of how we can get peace, something that you truly want. And it's interesting. I think now we're at a point where it's how should we be framing this conversation?
Yes.
Because something's being missed.
Yes.
And I think this is this book is one of the first steps to getting to that place.
Yeah, and what have you gotten yet to what is the what you just that's amazing. And so how do we need to be framing it, or do we not have those answered? I don't know.
Yeah, TBD on that. Right. Honestly, it was something that blew my mind, because when I thought about interactions with people, and it makes sense too, because then we're always oh, but this person's a good person, but then you see well, why when I try to talk to them about this issue, they won't listen, or they can't accept it. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that when I finish the book, that I'll have more answers on that.
Yeah, sure. No, we'll have you back on for those answers. But that makes so much sense, right? We're not we need to understand the psychology before we actually address the issues. And why aren't people open to hearing someone else's point of view?
I think too that what Jonathan was saying, that we have to somehow get through that barrier of I can't even process my involvement in this. That we have to somehow find a way to get through that barrier into the greater conversation. But it feels like, on what you were saying, Jonathan, that even in our family circles, at the dinner table, we can't even get past the there might be some blame here, and that's going to be okay. We're all going to be okay, but we have to acknowledge that. Yeah. And I feel it. People are nope, I didn't, Yeah. And it's I don't know if this is the correct way, but I think too, we talked about this last time, to white person, this has been something that we have been complicit in.
Yes.
Now let's go and get it fixed.
Right.
But we have to be able to get over that. And I think you're right, Jonathan, that everyone, from the white perspective, yes, I want peace, but I can't acknowledge that I might have had a role in something that wasn't that.
Yeah.
I'm struck by that, though, and I'm interested in in anyone who has a possible answer to this. We also, when we were talking about that, we were saying, I remember saying something we don't have a problem I have no problem saying, yes, for so long I was complicit in this because I didn't know enough, and I needed to be more educated, and I needed to be able to listen more. So if I don't have a problem saying that to all of you and to the internet right now, all million people that are watching, then, like, you know, what is it that makes people, why are some people afraid of admitting that, yes, I was wrong for so long and I didn't understand, and it's okay, like, I'm learning now, and I want to do better. What is it about saying we were wrong or saying we didn't know that people are afraid of?
Does someone else have something?
No.
I didn't want to interrupt anyone.
But go first. I'm collecting thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not sure if this is going to be... I think there's a great fear that comes with... We've been talking about this. The inherent part of learning is failure. You can't learn what you already are supposedly getting right. You have to sort of fail before you can, okay, I see. And I think people are afraid to acknowledge that they're afraid to fail and that they have failed in the past. I think that makes them not want to say that they had a part in something, because maybe they don't want to be placed in a box that they're afraid they're going to be placed in. They don't want to acknowledge that in their complicity there is a level of supremacy and racism that comes with your privilege that maybe they don't want to talk about or acknowledge because that's not okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That just,
I don't know.
I don't feel that way, so I don't. Does that?
And
You know what I'm saying?
For some people, it's like when we talk about like white fragility, and then how that can lead to like, oh, so I should feel guilty for being white. Like I wasn't part of the KKK.
Right.
I was just going to the extreme examples, and it's like I should feel guilty for being white. It's like no, and it's funny that that's your thought process. Like no, we're asking you to be aware that you're white. It says I need to be aware that I am a man, gay or straight. It would not matter. I am a man, and I'm granted certain privileges in this country, and a black man other ones. And it's this acknowledgement of I understand where this comes into play. Yeah. And now that I know this, I can either choose to fight against it or do nothing, which I think we're now at the point of understanding that like doing nothing means you're on the opposite side.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like this idea of like, you're saying I should feel guilty? Like no one's saying that. No. What we need to do is to be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. This is an NIU acting, but you know, Patricia talks about like it starts with awareness. You have to be able to acknowledge it before you can see that there's another side to it. Because if not, you're just in this thing because you won't say what actually is there. Yeah. Is that part? I think that's part of it. Maybe?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
Or if we're gonna go with it, like with like you look sad. You're like, I'm not sad. Oh, and then you look into that, like okay.
No, right, like yes, I am sad. Right.
So much can come from listening.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and even engaging that in saying it out loud, like I am sad, whether you think you are or not, the process of having to say that out loud is where I think the next moment comes from, that I think in our conversation could be a healing moment or an acknowledgement moment, an awareness that then makes you say, oh my God, that was in there, but now I can move myself to action to become better.
And is it, as I'm not in your training, I've never been trained as an actor, but is it also because in that repetition you're learning what the truth feels like, even if you don't know what it is until it's said at you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's an important thing here, I think, right? To understand what something that's the truth really feels like, because we know what it feels like. Whether someone tells us something is true or not is one thing, but when we say it ourselves, we know if what we're saying is true.
Yes. Right?
And then that, I think, leads to being able to understand how other people feel and if they're speaking the truth, and therefore be empathetic.
Well, and we have to be open to having someone see something that we are afraid to see about ourselves. And we have to be available to hear that and come to a place of acceptance. We have to be able to say it out loud.
Yeah.
And then that awareness that like, I think about where I grew up and how I grew up, and I had the privilege of not seeing, and I think that I have to understand that's a privilege I had. I didn't have to see what was going on in the world. Right. And now it is my job. I must, because we have to move forward and we have to fix what's going on.
Yeah. There was a comment on the chat back when we were asking the question about, like, why are we having this now, and why we've known this all along, but why is it happening now where it feels like there's more of a everyone's more comfortable talking about it. And a comment that I think is also part of it, which was very true in terms of, especially the murder of George Floyd, was everyone has cameras now. Imagine what happened all the time and we just never saw it, right? Like, so this has all been happening forever, but now every single person on the street has a phone with a camera. So now it's getting up and out there and everyone's seeing it. Do you guys feel like that's playing a part in why the conversation is moving forward? Because it's just, because of technology, we're able to, some of us who weren't aware of it are now just more aware of it? Diane?
I think that's very true.
Yeah.
I think it's also that we're also looking back at history. We're having this conversation earlier today, is that realizing that this country and all of us were built on a slave trade.
Yeah. And
coming to realize that, I know in my heritage, one of the things that a few years I found out, and I was very disturbed about this, I thought my family was part of the Underground Railroad and we were helping slaves get out, and I found out that, oh no, we owned them.
Oh wow.
Right.
Right.
But coming to that realization that many of us who've been in this country a long time were built on our prosperity, and everything was built on the slave trade. And to realize that and embrace that as truth and move on from there, I think is really, really important instead of denying it. So that would be the first thing. And then that apology, and then, oh my God, goes from there. And I think that, and having more video and more police cameras, so we can actually see this. And yes, this has been going on all the time. We just haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
So, it's really in your face, so you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, like, what it really is an inconvenient truth for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to slip by. And it's funny, I'm going to think about myself. Like, I came out, like, officially 2 or 3 years ago. And when I did, the amount of information I got about Stonewall, about the AIDS epidemic, the amount of information I then had to, like, deal within myself to really understand the community I was a part of. And I found that so interesting because it gave me so much, like, awareness and breadth and understanding of, like, who I am and how I fit into this group. And it was, the scary part was that, like, I didn't know any of this really beforehand, before I had to be part of this group, until I, like, started to set myself into this place, like, oh, now that I'm going to be more oppressed, let me know what I And it's because it's like the people that are being oppressed are the ones that are armed with the knowledge, the history, the information. And it's like, you need to know your past, you need to know your hacks. I say inconvenient truth because people that aren't affected by it, they don't have to know. Yeah. The great part we're in now in technology today, if you're not a reader, there's documentaries, articles written if you don't want to read a whole book. Mm-hmm. There are so many resources available to people where it's like now there is no excuse. Oh, I didn't learn it in school. Oh, it wasn't in my history book. Oh, none of that can count anymore, which is why, people are just getting short with each other because it's like, you don't have an excuse anymore.
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have these, like, magical little library devices now. Yeah.
Great.
No excuse not to know.
Yeah, there's no excuse not to know.
No.
There's a comment I want to throw into the mix that, the comment is, white people all want to be considered one of the good ones.
Yes.
And that's something that comes up in white fragility, about how we have this binary where because anything that's considered racist is considered bad, nobody wants to be labeled a bad person, so therefore we don't talk about it, and therefore we never get past it. I'm just curious what everybody's feedback is on how we overcome that hurdle.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that?
Mm-hmm.
That was our producer off screen there. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? So white people want to be considered one of the good ones.
I think it's very true about not wanting to be one of the bad people. Oh, I don't think that. But to, if you grew up not with a lot of diversity around you, you have to feel like, oh, maybe I'm one of those bad people because I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't experience it.
Right.
So, I think that's a real thing. I don't want to be one of those bad people, but maybe.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the experience, I would hate to think I would be.
Yeah.
And we also have a difficult time of people understanding things occur on a spectrum. And one bad thought does not make you like, oh, yep, they're all right and all this stuff. It's like, you can make a mistake. Like, you can say something, you're like, wow. And what the thing is, again, acknowledgement. My one friend, she said a great thing. We were having this great conversation about race. She's a white woman, and she was talking about, she was driving the other day, and she said that this person was driving badly. She moved over to the road, and then the person was Asian. She was like, oh, of course they were a bad driver. And she immediately stopped herself and said, where did that come from? Why did I think it was okay to, and she was like alone in her car, but she was saying this conversation stuff, like, why did I think that was okay to say? What, like, where was that from? And you're going to be so surprised of, like, ideas in the media that are things that came from the media, things that came from your family that aren't even direct experiences to what you had that come to the notions that you're believing. So it's like, I see that I made this mistake. It was racist. I'm not doing it again. And that doesn't make me like a racist person. Like, yeah, no, exactly. And it's like, yeah, no, what you said in that moment was bad, but it does not make you a bad person.
Right.
And I was like, props to you, because like people, the fact that you called yourself out on that and like you're putting yourself in that position, like, yes.
Yeah, you're holding yourself, and I think also those around you, those closest to you, accountable. It's making that leap at the dinner table to say, I'm not sure that's maybe what you meant, or can we talk about why that was what you said, because I don't think that that's right, and not because you want to blame or shame someone that you're close to, but rather to let's all move forward together. And I think this was on one of the empathy radios, we were talking about, that this has to now, we're in a daily practice. Like, we've now made a pledge to, like, every day in the grocery store, in every conversation, in my actions, in my donations, in whatever I can do in my education. This is now what I do, along with, taking a shower, that we have to train ourselves now that to be constant allies and educate. And I think Jonathan, your example is really powerful, because it does start with our own thoughts and being brave enough to hold ourselves accountable first.
Yeah. I have a question. So it's back to Diane's piece, because I have asked this question, Diane, as well a lot recently, especially when, the pandemic started and we wound up, after a few weeks, all realizing we were going to be kind of, quarantined for a long time, and then it continued to get worse and worse, and then when George Floyd was murdered, and then that kind of all of these crises and these moments really converging. And then on top of that, as comes as no surprise to any of us, the feeling that the powers that be are manipulating our empathy in certain ways to divide us intentionally, so that we are weaker than if we are together. because as we all know, easier to conquer us if we can't agree on anything. So my question is, do we feel like, like Diane's questioning towards the end of the piece, are we at a point, do we feel like we are at a point where, we are heading to a place where we're going to overcome, or at least begin to, or are we going to wind up back, again, like as Diane says, are we going to continue to come back to this place of protest time and time again and change nothing? And I only bring that up because Diane's asking it at the end of her piece. I ask it all the time because of my life experience, right? So some of us in the room, maybe come at it like, of course we're going to overcome, and of course we're going to not be back here again, because those are the glass half full, optimistic, more, like positive, probably enlightened of us. And then there's me, and maybe Diane and some others who are like, I'm not so sure. Like, I want that to be true more than anything, but what I see around me and my life experience has taught me that, yeah, I mean, I hope so, but like, so then why all of that? My point being is, for those of us who are questioning, like, are we just going to be back here again? What is it that we can be doing, or what is it that those of you who don't feel that way are like, what am I missing? Like, why am I not feeling so optimistic? And why am I convinced that the powers that be will continue to manipulate and divide us and just give us this little bit of time right now where we can protest and we can make some, like, like, to go back to the what's the movie, The Hunger Games? Like that idea in The Hunger Games of like, well, we'll just give them enough hope, right? So that they can feel like there's a little bit of hope, but not too much hope, because that's dangerous to us. So I don't know if that all made sense, but did it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
I think it's because we've seen it. We've seen that happen over and over again. You talk about how many people have died. Well, this goes, Black people have been killed. That's over a long period of time. And okay, there was some protest. People were upset about it. And what happens now? The corona goes away. We're all happy we can get out again. And all this is forgotten, because now we can go live our lives again.
Right.
And we can forget about all this other stuff, because now we can just go on with our lives.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that for me, I think it's a real fear that this is just going to kind of blow away. Yeah, everyone's all involved in it right now because we don't have anything else to do.
Right.
But when we do again, are we just going to forget?
Right.
And are we just going to not really forget, but just move on? And it goes under the rug again.
Right, and if that's true, if we fear that, what can we be doing to prevent that, like, slide back into normalcy?
It starts with realizing the shortcomings of the past, and I think most of us have watched 13th. I don't know if you guys have mentioned that. Yeah. And I think that is a great documentary that talks about how they abolished slavery, and here's how modern day slavery still exists. Here's how you think we've made progress, which is kind of what, like, my piece that I wrote that I'm doing Saturday is, like, exactly getting at. We think that we've gotten things. Segregation, and then bam, you can't live anywhere unless you're, like, in Compton, Chicago, West Philly, these specific Black neighborhood and areas, because otherwise you're not going to be allowed to live there. They're going to find a way to dissuade you, make you move out. And it's like, legally it's harder to do now. So if I really want to live in a neighborhood and I have the money, they can't really stop me from doing it, but they can try. And a lot of times they can succeed. Right. How can we make sure that the laws and regulations that we're fighting for are sturdy enough, strong enough, and fair enough that we can start to see this? And I don't think it'll be right away. I think it'll take a long time, because people will constantly find, this law, and we'll only enforce it with this group of people. It's going to be a very difficult strategic game that we have to play. Unfortunately, and it has to be a game that we play.
Right, right. Well, Jonathan, tell me what I'm not getting about what is it that, so, you talk about, like, Right. So it's like, yeah, no, it's cool, like desegregation, now this, but no, oh, but you can only live there and you can only live. What is it that, and I think we got into this a little bit on one of the Empathy Radios, maybe with Brian and Isaiah. The thing that it's always a metaphor that I think falls a little short, but this idea that if just for the sake of conversation right now, we were to treat racism as a disease that in the same way that like cancer is a disease, or just for the sake of this conversation, some other illness that you get, right? And you got this illness and you'd go to the doctor and the doctor would say, oh, what's your symptoms? Da 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 da. Oh, you have racism, right? Or like you have a cold, you have the flu. Oh, great. What can I take? What can I do to get better? Right? This, and this. Rest, have soup, drink fluids, right? Or you have cancer, you need chemo, da da da. Right? What is it that? Because I feel like racism is a disease. That's how it appears to me, right? So if that's true, and people understand things in certain ways about diagnosing something and saying, this is what caused this, right? Where did this come from? Because maybe this is a stupid and naive point of view, but I believe that a certain part of the population, if they were to understand where this came from, right? Because certain people have no clue why they believe the things they believe, and they just are perpetuating stuff that's been taught and said in the family and the parents and blah. So the parents didn't like this person because of the color of their skin, so I don't like that person. So they don't even know, right? But if they were told what was the cause of this, where did this come from, and why did it start, and what is the cause, and therefore be able to understand what caused it, which for me, in terms of a disease, would help me understand how to treat it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And I'm asking everyone if that like is anyone am I an idiot? Like
I have my ideas, but I also was part of that conversation. So I think what we talked about is sort of, I feel like I have sort of an answer that I want to see what Diane and Jonathan have to say before I chime in.
Okay.
If any.
There's also lots of Facebook.
It would be wonderful if it was a disease and you could take something and take a pill and have a soup and be over it. It would be wonderful, and it's just not that simple. And I don't know why. It would be wonderful if that could happen.
It's interesting. I think about currently, if we were to go to white America, that we'll say is generally racist, and we'll say racist and poor, and go in history and show them, at one point, like, poor white people and black people wanted to work together because they were both very oppressed, and they were trying to make sure that, there was more opportunities. And then here's what happened. No, you're better than this person. And they say you're better than that person, but where have you moved at all? And it may not be, like, maybe the first step is, like, not noticing, oh, you're racist, you don't care about this other group of people, but look at, like, you trust these people and you don't have a strong reason to. The first example that comes from my Harley Davidson. This is an American brand, and we're going to keep this factory in America. Boom, moved it to Pakistan. The months of work, and people crying, tears, and I'm like, and it's like, you didn't see this coming? Will you vote for him again? You were supposed to get job security from these people. They keep saying trickle down effect, trickle down economies, but you haven't had a pay raise, but the people at the corporate level have had a pay raise. And it's so interesting, and it's the thing that scares me is, like, even if we presented this information of, like, your enemy is not who you think it is.
Right.
I don't know how many people could be willing to accept it because there's so much generations of information of spewing and hate that is so ingrained in them, and that's the part that's tricky.
Yeah, it feels to me like if you were to present those concepts to a lot of folks who, and I have tried to do this. What you're asking a lot of people to do, especially the older that they are, and ingrained in certain kinds of points of view, is to basically have to be forced to question their entire belief system from when they're from birth or as far back as they can remember. And the older that people are, the more set in their ways they are, the more unwilling they seem to be generally to call into question everything they've ever known and believed and thought. Is that fair?
Yeah, because that's what that's the fear. The fear of the unknown. And if I have to acknowledge that what I always believed was true, and I always believed that that person or that whatever was protecting me, to have to live to live with the understanding that that no longer is true and that it was never true, and the fear of what comes at the other side of that, I think is where people are like, nope, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. I can't. I think too that we talked about this on a different one, but I believe so strongly in education that we have to rewrite what we teach our children in our schools, and we have to make education more accessible in every community, and we need to revamp that, because that's where our children come. And you hope that the expansive process of opening the mind to a different way of thinking would help them. Maybe if they did go home and it was not great, but they went to school and someone said, what about something else?
Yeah.
And I think also is that if we make it a smaller problem, this is a big problem, it's them versus us, but it's one person at a time.
Yeah.
One person, you get to know your neighbor, and they're a good person.
Right.
You get to know another neighbor, and they're good people. And so I think that it's more one-on-one conversations with people of all kinds of races together, and get rid of the word race, and just everyone is a person of color.
Right.
And it changes one person at a time, one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
And that way you can break down all those boundaries. If you look at them versus us, or those, or big, it's very scary. But if it's just one person at a time, not so scary.
But that's why I believe it has to, it doesn't have to start. One of the biggest players that we cannot ignore is media and entertainment.
Yeah.
Because until we have constant, appropriate, and enough representation in media and proper representation in media and entertainment of what various groups of people look like in this country, you have that person in somewhere in South Dakota, and they're like, I've never seen a black person in my life. All I know is from what I see on the news, and they're all criminals.
Right.
And it's like they don't get the chance to meet someone that would change their opinion, to change their mind, because they've been fed this information.
Yeah.
And again, even if they don't read books, even if the education is lacking, if they can get it through the media that they intake, that is still something powerful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You think about all those homes at the dinner table, and there's the television with the news on at playing while everyone's at dinner, and you're absolutely right, Jonathan.
Yeah. A couple comments happening while we're having this conversation. Because of structural white supremacy, we benefit from racism. There's less incentive to question or change something you benefit from.
True.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately true. Yes.
Yeah. And look at the makeup funding, et cetera, of our schools. Yeah. Hard. And Jonathan, you were starting to talk about this a little bit before, but so how do we get to that? If we know that these the powers that be in all of these places that are making those decisions, like funding of schools and redistricting and voting and all of these things, right? And how do we start to make those changes that help us at the smaller level be able to follow the new kind of the changes in the structure that we want to have happen, if we can't even get people at that level to help create the change at the level that it matters that it happens at? Does that make sense? We had Obama for 8 years, and we all know that as much as he tried to get done, all half, 90% of everyone else at that level was trying to do every time was keep him from getting anything done. Yeah. And then he does get a ton of shit done still. And then the last 3.5 years is spent undoing everything he did. Right. So is it just that it's got to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, and it becomes, someone else, that it's not just Obama, and then now we're going to have 20 more white people for 100 years. We keep trying to get, what am I missing? Yes.
I'm going to read a comment that I wrote.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just from an article I read today. It's Ibrahim Kendi said, education, love, and exemplary black people will not deliver America from racism. Racist ideas grow out of discriminatory policies, he argues, not the other way around.
Racist ideas grow out of discriminatory policies, not the other way around. Right. Isn't that what I was saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right. Change the policies.
Yeah. Also,
which goes back to Jonathan's point about voter suppression and the need to actually get into the legislation.
Absolutely. Get involved. Be involved. Get people to vote.
Yeah.
That's where it all comes down to. And everybody should have a vote.
Yeah.
And everybody should help everyone get to vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be huge. Be a huge difference if everyone could really vote.
Yeah. Are we starting to see, it seems like to me, watching the news lately, that we're starting to see even a greater attempt than even maybe previously at voter suppression this time around because of this now, larger movement?
I'm not sure if we're seeing any greater.
No.
We're just seeing it. We didn't see it before. So I don't know if it's any greater or any different than it's always been.
Yeah.
We're just seeing it. Just, was mentioned earlier. There's cell phones, so people, there's Facebook, there's all these media things that everything is showing. So it's just showing its ugly head, where it was always there, but now it's more prominent.
Yeah. Do we feel like because we're now having these conversations, which hopefully, as we were saying, we're obviously having them more often and more people seem to be having them, and then we're saying that we hope that they continue after we get, kind of back to some sense of normalcy in our lives. Do we feel like, and I think Rachel and I were talking about that today too, that we've, there's been no distraction. I think, Diane, you were saying it too, right? We've been in quarantine. We've all had nothing to do. So there hasn't been a way for anyone to distract us from having these conversations. So we are having them, right? So then when we get back out of our houses, hopefully someday in the near future, like continuing to do what we're doing now, and artists especially, I think, creating these spaces for people to have these conversations, and like your Jonathan saying, through the, trying to maybe balance in some way the messaging that the media is trying to get out, or the government's trying to get out through the media and certain entertainment, right? And being there as artists to try to provide an alternative message to what's being fed to keep people separate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think in part with that, we think about how often are we having these conversations, right? Like, why do we wait until Black History Month to talk about 5 people
right.
on the loop?
On the loop.
And it's like, it's so important. Like, Black Lives Matter should not just be happening when someone dies.
Right.
It's like, we need to keep this going. And I think if we've learned anything from this, and my friend, she had this great post that it was like Instagram stories. So then it was 3 bars, so like civil rights, abolition of slavery, and something else, and the Black Lives Matter movement. And then you would skip through the story, and like Black Lives Matter ended on the second one, and there were still like 5 more pages. It was like timeline that showed how long this really needs to go to see the effective change that we have seen for these other movements.
Yeah.
And because that means it has to be constant and it has to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And we have to maintain this when we're no longer suffering from this pandemic and we're no longer isolated. We have to continue what we seem to have achieved in terms of a frequency and an intensity and a regularity of this conversation, right?
And action, I think the actionable steps, the Facebook post is not enough. You have to register people to vote, or whatever it is that you feel called to do to move the conversation forward, to make change, then you have to actually do it, It can't just be because you clicked your post thing and then you went and made dinner and didn't actually engage and do something that's actionable. I think.
Yeah, Diane Yoder commenting, there is also a greater pushback. Obama and Eric Holder are leading efforts to fight voter suppression efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does feel like it's you know, for me anyway, it feels like a much greater combined effort, because people who, you know, kind of, it felt like we weren't going to hear from again after they'd been in public the view for so long. You know, even Bush, right, is now, you know, Obama got Bush to get into the conversation, and people are just like, you know, really feel called to actually do something now.
Because we have to save our country.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
this is really,
Yeah,
really bad.
it's really bad. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, I'm curious, in the last few minutes here, I'm curious if people get the sense that, I know it comes as no surprise to everyone who on this call and who knows me, that I'm not the most optimistic person in the room at any given moment. But like, do you think people are finally getting it through their heads that the concept of what we've been taught America was, and how like amazing the American way and our American value system, and what we've always like been told that was, and what this country was founded on, and freedom and all this nonsense that a lot of us knew was nonsense for a long time. But do you feel like people are finally starting to accept the possibility that they've been lied to this entire time? No, you don't feel that way. Diane
said
worse
no.
than me.
I do not, and I think it is the responsibility of every single artist to keep the conversation in the front of America's, because people will listen to artists. It takes, because we have a way of expressing ourselves in whatever that is that gets their attention and changes everything. So I think that it's the responsibility of an artist to get their work out there and keep this conversation in the front of people, because when the great pause is over, people will go back to their lives and forget, and here we are again. Yeah. So I think it's really important that the conversation continues to go, and artists will carry the banner for it.
Cool.
Yeah. For me, the biggest thing was like, I think more liberal white people who thought they were more advanced got like shaken up and like, oh, just kidding, I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Right.
They were probably also voting for the same policies we were, even though they weren't as aware. So how much swing did we really get? That's hard to say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess a little pushback on that from the internet, from the Facebook. Some people, not many people. So yeah, we won't know for a while, right? Like how many people did we move forward a little? Yeah.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, who's sort of famous for being a pessimist, was quoted saying, "I'm feeling pretty good," he said. "I'm not sure that people realize just how quickly the needle has moved. Even people in the middle ground are now talking about systemic racism. Look at the rapidity with which so many people are finally seeing things for what they are. It's hard to argue there isn't actual progress."
Well, you and I, Diane, we're in the minority here.
Yeah, I guess so.
I want to believe it.
Please, prove me
Yeah, no, I'd love to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Prove me wrong.
I hope I'm wrong.
Love it.
Yeah. No, I think everyone just has, their own life experience to speak from. So it's interesting to see how people, Yeah. Cool. Did you have any final? Anyone have any final thoughts on our way out? This was such a really awesome conversation. Yeah,
Great conversation.
Thank you both. For those watching, still just in terms of Diane talking about how important we all take our responsibility as artists and what we need to be doing. Those of you watching. Diane, we've known Diane for a very long time. Diane is a visual artist, a painter, an actor, a costume designer. We worked with her on shows that she's costume designed. She painted a piece in Volume 1 of the Empathy Project. She submitted a story for the second one, and we're just always grateful to have Diane in our lives and part of any conversation. And on that same note, Jonathan, for those of you who aren't as familiar with Jonathan's work, who has recently joined the Empathy Project team and world, and which we're so grateful to you, Jonathan, for. Jonathan Alsop fans can tune in on Saturday night to see Jonathan. He's currently creating a piece that he's written himself to show in this piece on Saturday night. So we're really grateful to you two for joining us, for really helping us provide this space for us to hopefully start to model a conversation that more people should be having. And just thank you so much. We're really grateful to both of you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate being asked.
Cool.
And nice meeting you, Jonathan.
Yeah, likewise.
Cool. Thank you both, and thank you all for
Thank
watching.
you.
And just a final reminder, 48-hour virtual raffle, donations of $5 to our Venmo at Empathy Project, or the PayPal Giving Fund link in our chat. We'll spread that out over social media over the next 2 days, and we'll do the live drawing for the winners of the raffle. You can win a ticket to the show and some cool merch for a $5 donation. And otherwise, we'll hopefully see everyone Saturday night at the Empathy Project Volume 2. So thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you guys so
see you
much.
next week.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
We love you. Bye-bye.
Love you guys.